not trying means that we are missing the opportunity to learn how we could do it differently.
Helen Tupper came up with the concept of Squiggly Careers, which became a Sunday Times bestseller.
I'd really like to demystify what learning can look like. It's not very sexy.
From her leadership roles at top companies like Microsoft, BP and Virgin, she has seen what blocks us learning and growing at work.
A lot of people struggle to say the hard thing. Instead of me defending my work or being, really upset by it, I would kind of acknowledge.
Make sure you subscribe so we can continue to get bigger and bigger guests. All right, Helen, welcome to Jimmy's Jobs of the Future.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to do this. You've just written the new third instalment of the Squiggly Careers book, Learn Like a Lobster.
Indeed.
So much to talk to you about. Do you want to explain the premise of the book?
Sure. Maybe before the premise, the problem. Is that all right?
Yeah, go on.
So the problem is that it's never been more important to learn at work because of the pace of change, everything that's happening outside of often the jobs that we're doing, the world that we work in. But it's also never felt harder for lots of people. So there's this big tension with we need to learn so we stay relevant and our careers are resilient, but people are finding it too hard to do. And I think if we do not solve the problem of learning at work, then a lot of people are going to get left behind. And so that's the problem, really, that we've seen in all of our work. We've seen this tension, we've seen this problem. People often talk about, I haven't got time, I'm overwhelmed by how much there is to learn. There aren't any role models that I can see. We don't really celebrate learners at work. Who are these brilliant learning role models? And we decided to take what we've learned about Squiggly Careers, which is, give people a sticky concept, make complex simple, make it easy for people to take action. And we wanted to take that and apply it to this need for learning to look better, look different at work. And we found our answer in the Lobster because it has 3 traits which we are very fascinated by, but more importantly, we think are very useful when we're thinking about learning. Shall I talk about these traits?
Yeah, I can show off and show how I've read the book.
Okay, what do you want to show off? Trait number 1, what do you think, Jimmy?
Trait number 1 is that they never stop growing. This
is true. Indeterminate growth, so they never ever stop growing till the day they die.
Yes.
I'll whisper that bit.
Till the day they die. And they eat their own shells.
That's trait number 3. We've missed one in the middle.
Oh,
So the first one is they never stop growing. The second trait is that this growth is enabled because they shed their shell. So shell is a constraint to their growth. They recognise that constraint and then they put themselves in a position of vulnerability. So they break out their shell, crawl away from it, leave the shell behind. They're like a jelly lobster, I suppose.
Yeah.
Really, really vulnerable. But then that means the shell can grow back. And when it does, it's bigger and stronger than it was before. And they do it over and over again. They're sort of experts at recognising they're constrained, putting themselves in a position of vulnerability and growing bigger and better because of it. And then the reason, to your point, the reason that most people don't know all these fascinating facts about lobsters is because we don't see these discarded shells because our very resourceful lobster eats the shell to fuel its growth. And so it's sort of a self-sustaining system for growth. And we think if you take those traits and apply them to learning, you would never stop learning, like the lobster never stops growing. You would learn in your hardest moments. When you're vulnerable, that would be the moment that you learn the most. You'd really look for the learning there. And then you would lead your own learning rather than making your development dependent on your manager or a department. Like our resourceful little lobsters, or not so little, you would be a resourceful learner. Use what you've got in order to keep growing.
And I did your lobster profiling test as well. And
What's your lobster skill?
Well, I was a lobster that learned in hard times.
Oh, you're rare.
Ah.
You're rare. That is the least popular lobster. So this lobsters with the ability to learn in hard moments, which typically means good at feedback. Don't fear feedback. Good at asking for it. Good at giving it. Okay, receiving it. You look for the learning. Also, you don't fear failure. So you know failure is part of the learning process, and in those moments you will look for the learning. That is the least skill that we have in workplaces. Most people are not learning hard moments lobsters.
That is interesting. So the example I give with this myself, so I agree with your premise of that people aren't learning as much. And I think there's a few factors at play with that. I think one of the things is general social media kind of perfection of it looks bad to look rubbish at something. And the problem is whenever you're learning something new, you're going to be rubbish at the start. So people don't like that. And also I think generally the costs on business, to make a slightly political point, have got so high lately that it is very hard for businesses to carve out the time for people to learn because they aren't getting the kind of like maximisation from it. And I think it's a classic, we're both a big fan of him, Rory Sutherland, but like businesses have become so driven by efficiency that they haven't actually sort of done some of that stuff. So I completely agree with that. And I think it's a real challenge actually of like, how do you sort of put yourself in a position where you're willing to learn? Because actually that starts with admitting that you don't know something.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to tap into is both like a learning mindset, because if you have that, then you're going to look for learning like proactively. But then there's sort of the mindset and the moments. So can we prime people to look for learning? That's the mindset. And then can we help people spot more moments for learning that are already in their day?
Yes.
So to your point, it's not, let's take an away day and all learn together, because like that's more time, that's more cost. It's, we're already in 12 meetings this week.
Yeah.
How do we add more moments of learning in those meetings? We could improve the questions. We could experiment with doing it differently. We could have an agenda item. We could do our agendas differently so they're designed for learning. And that's what we're trying to do, re-look at where learning can happen in the moments we are already in at work.
Yeah. And I thought going through your calendar at the start of the week and being like, where are the moments to kind of learn on it, was really interesting. Also, the other great stat that was in there, well, I mean, there were many, but one that really jumps out at me, seeing as you mentioned meetings, 70% of people believe if they had less meetings that their job satisfaction would increase.
I know. Imagine that. You know how much we spend on increasing people's job satisfaction, and it's like, just cancel a few meetings. I think people might be happier if they don't have to be in meetings all the time.
Well, it's so interesting, in that though, like, I think it partly becomes such a kind of, well, with meetings, I partly think they're a bit of a status play. Maybe that's a bit of my sort of Downing Street overhang years in terms of like being invited to certain meetings. But I think it's true in commercial world as well, right? It's like a real, are you in the room type thing. Like it's
we've it's a bit controversial. We've banned one-to-ones in my company.
Oh really?
Yeah, because like my background's corporate, my business partner's background's corporate, and our business is not the scale or size of a corporate. We're a small, agile organisation, but we found a bit of corporate carryover was creeping in. So, one-to-ones, bit of meeting culture going on, over process for things that don't need to be that complicated. And all these one-to-ones were filling my diaries with no agendas. I mean, it was nice to talk to my team, but it just didn't feel like a great use of time. So there's an idea that's in the book that started in our business with how can we make more of our meetings? How can we learn more from them? So we don't call them one-to-ones anymore because it just felt like a nice chat. And, there are other ways to do that, but not at that moment. And so every meeting now has to have a decision and discussion agenda. And you can have as many of those meetings with us. It's not that we are saying you can't meet. It's not that. It's just we want the meetings to add value. We want the meetings to be more primed for learning. And it has been so helpful. So I go in, it's really clear. Both people feel better at the end of it because the time has been well spent and they've got what they wanted from it. It's been a bit of a game changer, but we had to get rid of one-to-ones for that to be possible.
What was it again? Decision?
It's a decision discussion agenda. So I had one today with someone in my team actually about podcast stuff, and it was, these are decisions we need to make today. These are some things I need to discuss. And you look at it and we kind of work our way through. It's even better if the agenda items, so the things you want to discuss, are framed as questions. So rather than just bullet, discuss Helen and Jimmy meeting. It would be, the question might be, how can Helen and Jimmy record the best podcast ever? And because your brain loves a question, like it ponders it, it thinks about it, you get more out of it than just a dry bullet point with a statement on, which is what, if meetings even have agendas, that's what most of them look like.
Right, well, so Jimmy's job's away day tomorrow, so we'll be reordering the agenda slightly in terms of questions. No, but I think that's like it's good, right? Because we're coming out tomorrow partly to have a bit of like think strategy, like where's everything going, but also Sonny's big thing is like, well, we need some decisions that come out of it and some actions and which is totally right. So yeah, it's interesting. Where can you remember where you got the first idea from for the lobster?
Yes.
For the book?
Yeah, I do remember it. And the evidence of it is on Instagram, but you have to scroll a really, really long way back to 2020. So this is pandemic times, and I actually can't remember where I saw it, but I do. The bit that I found out about was about the lobster shedding its shell, and that when it is vulnerable, that is the moment that it grows the most. And at the time, it made me think, lots of us have shed our shells in the pandemic. We're a bit vulnerable, and I used it as a way to share with our community that, like, if you're vulnerable, it's actually an opportunity to grow. Like, if you treat it like the lobster, it's an opportunity to grow. And we've got this like picture of a lobster that sort of it's all animated and is that we posted, and it connected with lots of people, lots of lovely comments at the time. It sort of served its purpose of hopefully empathizing with our community. And then it just got, shelved. It was just one of many ideas that, we never thought it would be a book. It was just an insight. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago, we were writing a book on confidence gremlins, that we kind of came back to this. The lobster just came back, and the more that we started to look into lobsters, the more we realised there was to learn from them and to use it to help other people learn. But yeah, it was sort of just hidden in the back of our brains for a little while, I think.
That's interesting.
An idea in waiting, maybe.
How those things can come to the fore, though, right? Like reading about them and so on. And I think for everyone, you have to through your career, right? Shed various sort of skins, like that happens. And so on. And yeah, most growth comes from after it, largely because you've been perhaps constrained for a little while.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, we could dive into your career, Jimmy, but I would imagine there have been like pivotal moments in your career where you've obviously made big changes, and it's a change of identity, it's a potential change of income, it's a change of your network. Like, those pivot moments in careers are really exposing, but then the growth that can come from it, like, just take the podcast, like this, what's been possible because of a hard decision, learning in a hard moment, leads to lots more growth.
I do occasionally listen back to the first episode.
I don't do that.
But yeah, exactly. You've done like 500 podcast episodes, but it's just so funny to kind of do that and listen back to them, just because it's a reminder of that you're just rubbish at anything at the beginning. And the thing was, I knew I'd got the sort of skill set of like asking decent questions and getting to the nub of a point. Like, that was a lot of what I was doing at Number 10, but it's obviously doing it for a different broadcast audience was a different skill and required it. But I think that's quite hard in terms of, and it gets talked about a lot, right? Like transferable skills, but actually knowing what your transferable skills are, I think is quite difficult, because it's difficult to see across an industry that you don't really know, right? You've got an idea of how you think it works, but often it comes more from popular culture than any kind of realism of
I think feedback can help you with that. So we often use this question of what 3 words would you use to describe me at my best? And you could make that even more specific. You could say, what 3 skills do I use when you see me at my best? Like, you could kind of really focus it if you're looking for, like, well, what is it? Is it presenting? Is it that I'm really good at data? Is it I'm really good at questions? But sometimes when we haven't got that answer for ourselves, which can both be a lack of awareness, but also a lack of confidence, like we don't sometimes own the abilities. If you go and ask 5 people you've worked with for a while, what 3 words would you use to describe me at my best? Or what 3 skills am I using when you see me at my best? That's data for your development, which is something we talk about in the book. And there is a lot of data for our development around. We just often don't have the questions to access it.
Yes.
But it's quite useful. It's quite you ask 5 people that question, 15 bits of data for your development, and then there's a decision, because you get all those answers back. Like, what do you see me? What words would you use to describe me at best? And then the decision is, but is that what I want to be known for? Which is really where I think the time should be spent from us. We're not, what am I good at? Go ask other people that. You decide whether what they think you're good at is actually what you want to be known by.
Yeah, it's interesting, because it's one of the things that I say to young people a lot is go and ask people what you think you're good at. Because I think it's particularly hard when you're, I literally posted about this on LinkedIn this morning, but it can be particularly hard when you're sort of starting out to know what you're good at, because you just assume that everyone is good at those things and so on. But then equally, as you get further on in your career and you're supposed to look like you know everything, and you're supposed to have some, that can be hard then as well. And also, the skills change, and what you need to kind of like grow a business is different to starting one, etc. Right?
Yeah.
You will appreciate that.
I wonder whether there's sometimes like a bit of a confidence curve. Like you have low confidence at the start because like you don't know what you're doing, and then you get to like, oh, I think I'm competent, and then you get to like, everyone thinks I should know what I'm doing, but I don't know. I've never really thought about it. But I do wonder in a career where there's like a confidence, it's not this kind of very linear trajectory confidence. Like the longer your career, the more confident you are. I think there are, there's probably moments where we lose confidence because we've reached a different stage, or we lose confidence because everyone thinks that we're supposed to know what we're doing, but we still don't feel like we do know what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a squiggle, right?
Yeah,
it's your like almost original kind of idea. I think it's interesting. I mean, I lost quite a bit of confidence, I think, in the pandemic, trying to work out what on earth I was going to do next. But then also there was a sort of fun kind of element of, well, nobody's doing anything for the first few months of it, but I'd already been out of a job for 6 months at that stage, so it was just sort of like, but it was an interesting time. But also that was one of the key things when I was reading the book that I saw in myself was about like how to become a better thinker, and are you an out loud thinker? And obviously I know your business partner reasonably well as well, Sarah, but I was thinking you and I are so like out loud.
I know. We're really annoying, Jimmy, to other people.
to people, and you were like, you could send people voice notes, etc. And I thought, yeah, that is me. But it was, I thought back to the pandemic. Yeah, no wonder sitting in a box room on my own was so blooming difficult, like trying to work it all out and whatever. But explain to us that how to be a better thinker and out loud thinkers.
Well, so you kind of have defaults just because of your kind of natural style. So kind of my default is that I will be an out loud thinker. So if I've got a problem, I need to talk it through. I need to talk it through with somebody. Like I kind of bounce off, and in articulating the problem, I create the solution. Like I kind of create some kind of clarity, and that's how I think. Or you can be someone who's more of a quiet thinker, like my business partner Sarah, and she will she will kind of process and sit and reflect and think through herself and ponder, and she's considering all the scenarios and all that kind of stuff. And it's not that one is bad and one is good. It's just that what we really want to do is be a bit of both, like not always default, because actually my style is very dependent on someone being able to listen to me, right? So what do I not think if you're not available? That doesn't really work. So we want people to experiment with, for me, for example, being someone who does quiet thinking, like my business partner, I can't do it as long as her, but I could do 5 minutes. I could and think, do I get to better answers? Maybe do quiet thinking before I do out loud thinking. Maybe the quality of my out loud thinking would be better if I'd actually done a little bit of that before. And a lot of like the looking for learning that we want people to do is to sort of recognise their patterns. What do you default to in a hard moment? What do you default to when you need to think? And say, well, here's a different approach. Experiment with it and see what you might learn.
Yeah.
And you might learn that it's not right for you. You might think, well, no, I'm better at being an out loud thinker. But that's okay. That's okay. But not trying means that we are missing the opportunity to learn how we could do it differently. And that's what we're trying to encourage people to do.
Yeah, I could certainly do a bit more. Because mind mapping is one of the things that you kind of come up with in it, right? Yeah,
mind mapping. Or even, again, this kind of thinker-doer tendencies here, which I have a do. I'm very action-orientated. Even just forcing yourself to just sit and think with no mind mapping, no doodling, like just to ponder, just to let your brain connect the dots, not you connecting them on a piece of paper, which is what we do in mind mapping, but just to let your brain connect the dots and see. And it's quite uncomfortable, I find. That's what I learn. I struggle without a pen and paper to create clarity or a conversation to make it connect. But the quality of your thinking can be better if you do that, and it's like a bit of brain training. Would I do it for half an hour? No, I would find that too hard. Could I sit and think for 5 minutes and force yourself not to? What a lot of people who are doers that create mind maps tend to do is they might turn their mind maps into a sort of to-do list.
Yeah.
And so you start doing it. So, you know, your doiness, it just comes through and you're like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll just email Jimmy. I'll do that afterwards. And you kind of get distracted by the great idea that you've put down on paper, and it basically becomes an idea to action. Our brain is magnetized towards that. Whereas just sitting with the thinking is what we're really trained to do. Only you or I know if we're it's like a cop out. But that's the point. And how hard, I always think, gosh, how hard do I find it to sit and think without pen and paper, without looking for the answers on my phone?
But I think one of the things is we've almost eliminated boredom.
Yes.
Right? And so it's actually just really, like, you just don't have it. Occasionally, not as good at this as I would like, but I would try and run without music, right? Because it's just like let the brain kind of go, because it's interesting where it goes. But again, it probably shows something about my kind of like general fidgety. I need to be running at the same time, but it is just really difficult just to sort of sit and think. But this is why people say they get good ideas in the shower or 100%. On the loo or whatever, right?
My answer to my son at the moment, he's 11. I read some research about basically that we're not allowing children to be bored, but actually in that moment of boredom is actually where kind of creativity happens, because you have to find a way through it. And so every time he's like goes to me, I'm bored, I go, brilliant. He hates it. He absolutely hates it.
I think my kids, they don't say they're bored at the moment, they just say they're hungry. It's like mine is 6.
Are you feeding them, Jimmy?
So, yeah, I am. It's just like literally just had lunch, like, and it's just like, I want the snack. It's I think it's interesting how it's all sort of changing the wiring of our brain, right, and the learning side of it, because it's become one of the most important things, I think, is as the world is going to change, and it's going to get quicker and quicker over the next few years as well, is that the ability to learn is going to be absolutely paramount. And it's the skill that when we're recruiting that we look for more than anything is, can you learn quickly? Right? That's basically going to be the biggest predictor of whether you'll be a success.
But I kind of feel like learning is a bit like the word trust. If I say, trust me, like trust is a small word, but it's huge. There's so much that contributes towards trust. Same with learning. Like if you say, we need to learn more, we need to be better learners. Actually, people might be like, yeah, we do. But it's like, but
who's going to disagree?
But how? And so what we're trying to do is, but if you break down the book, there's basically those 12 different ways to be a better learner. That's effectively what we're doing, particularly at work. Like we're very anchored around at work, how do we be better learners? And so whether it's, talked about beginning, for example, how uncomfortable that is, being a better beginner, finding feedback easier, looking at failure and mistakes, adapting, playing, connecting, sharing. Like these are all practical ways that are proven to help you learn, and none of them look like going on a course. None of them. It's not about going on a course. It's not about that. It is about these practical things that we can do every day so that we can learn better. And I'd really like to demystify like what learning can look like. It's not very sexy, but I think it's quite useful.
That is so interesting, right? So let's take 2 things that I've done in my career, 2 courses that I've done.
Yeah.
Because I think I really reached for that as a sort of like shorthand type thing.
Yeah.
So leaving number 10, wanted to kind of learn about entrepreneurship, etc. Went out and studied at Stanford for a couple of months on their Exec Ed's Ignite course. And it was amazing. But the biggest thing was probably changing my environment, actually.
Okay.
Rather than... And also, because the course was evenings and weekends, it gave me time to think and meet people in the day. So that was really important. But then I also did a stand-up comedy course as well, because that was one of the other things I wanted to do post number 10. And it was partly ridiculous doing a stand-up comedy course, because you just... For that instance, you need to learn by doing, really. That is the only kind of like way. And I thought actually, the whole course was about 30 hours and it was good and it gave me a bit of confidence, and there was a gig at the end and you met some people through it as well, which was also useful. But actually, if I'd just done 30 hours kind of on my own, like I would have, I'd have got to the same place. Probably would have done it quicker, frankly.
Do you think? Because I was just thinking, like, if I think about what we know, like in their stand-up, for example, you're experimenting.
Yeah.
You're experimenting, you're being a beginner, you are probably failing quite a lot. I don't know. I didn't see it.
was.
I didn't see it, Jimmy, but I'm sure some jokes didn't land.
Yeah, exactly. You haven't seen it since, so you know it hasn't. It's not on Netflix.
I'm just making an assumption. And then also connecting. So there's 4 elements, I would imagine, in what you did as part of that experience that actually lock in learning. And so, yes, you could have, I don't know, read a book on how to do stand-up comedy, and you might have learned by reading the book. But actually what you will have taken from experimenting, failing, connecting, those elements are in, like, really, really important for making learning last.
Yeah. That's true. But I just think, I sometimes think I run towards the sort of shorthand of doing a course, and I think it will navigate me through it quicker. So it was when you were like, learning does not have to look like a course. Like, I was just like, oh, feel seen there.
You may have noticed we've been doing something different recently. From our budget live stream to the episode where I sat down with the producers, we've been experimenting with new formats that you've been asking for. We want to do much more of that in 2026, but truthfully, those episodes don't quite perform like some of our blockbuster ones with prime ministers or business titans, even though amongst our core fans, they're often your favourite. So in early 2026, we're giving you the opportunity to be even more involved with the show, and we are launching Jimmy's Jobs Backstage. The waitlist is now open, and if you pledge your annual support, we'll etch your name into our brand new studio. We'll be able to bring you more into the show by listening to your guest suggestions and your questions that you have for them. And there'll also be more live shows next year which you'll get early access to. If you or someone you know are a fan of this new way of doing media, check out the show notes to see how to join us backstage, or give it as a Christmas gift. And hey, you might even be able to put it through your learning and development budget. See you backstage. Now back to the episode.
But what does learning look like then, right? And what's it going to look like, do you think, in the next 5 to 10 years as well, right, as the world changes?
I guess the thing that there's 2 things that I'm really excited about that I don't see today, but I would love to see. When you're like, what does learning look like? What I would like it to look like, I would really like to see more teams learning together. So we've talked at the moment very much about me learning or you learning, and I think there is a really big opportunity to find more moments for teams to learn together, because that's where we're spending most of our time. And in the meetings and moments we're already in, if we can be doing team experiments, with this really great thing, we call them like helpful how-tos. So there's a proven way that we can learn more is by sharing. So the kind of insight here is, if I'm going to share something with you that I know, first of all, I have to recall, like, what do I know about whatever this thing is? Then I have to think, how can I articulate that in a way that is useful? So that's kind of like another like mental loop that I need to go through. And then I have to share it with you in a format that's going to be relevant. Those processes clarify that knowledge in my mind. So it's much clearer now. I'm like, oh yeah, you start to think, oh, I've got a gap there. Maybe I don't know that very much. So sharing is a really powerful way that we improve our learning, as well as moving it to someone else that we're passing that on to. And we have these things called helpful how-tos. It's a really fun team experiment to do. We didn't constrain it to work. You could say, everyone in the team, you're in a meeting that you're already in. And you go, everyone in the team has got 5 minutes. Here's a post-it note. Everyone in the team has got 5 minutes to write down a helpful how-to about something they know that they think would be useful for other people in this room to know. Now, you could constrain it to work, and people will talk about, I don't know, co-pilot prompts and how to, I don't know, manage their meetings or create useful agendas that people can actually feel good about at the end. So you could constrain it to work. We didn't. And we had everything from how to make was it a cold press coffee or something? Someone in my team knows a lot of languages, how to learn a language. I did how to create a custom GPT because I'm that geeky. Someone else
bringing it back to work.
Yeah, I've got nothing else to me, Jimmy. But it was it's a really fun way of learning in teams, and so that's just like one element. I think we do these sprints. So we have. Yesterday, someone messaged me, over 120 people in Kerry, a company that we work with, Kerry Dairy, are sprinting this week. and these are team moments for learning, and it's 10 minutes a day that teams are doing, I think it is a lot easier to create learning cultures in companies if it's not just about every individual needs to do it for themselves or every leader needs to espouse it. If we make it easier for teams to learn together, I get really excited about the potential there. And then the second one is I'd love to see learners celebrated. You know how we celebrate people getting promoted? Well done, you reached the next level. I would love to see, like, well done, look at what you've learned. I'd love us to put learners on a bit of a pedestal, because at the moment I'm having to put a lobster on the pedestal. So I've got a role model, and what I want to do, I don't really want to replace lobsters, but I would like lobster learners. I'd like the real people to be there to be role models in companies.
I think that's true. The individual side is interesting because I often think of the school system as generally quite weighted towards individualistic endeavours, and actually most of life isn't.
Yeah.
Even though we put somebody on that pedestal sometimes, I think it's one of the things that actually where the school system is most misplaced in terms of preparing people for the outside world. It's also the fact that schools massively over-index on academic ability for the first 18 years of life. Very few jobs actually require that kind of academic ability. But I also think the school system gets a lot of stick. I don't think many people have come up with better ways for how to change it. And I see with my own kids at the moment, for the first sort of few years of school, really actually what they're being taught is, how to write, how to count, how to do maths, and they are the basic building blocks of what you're going to need across the board as well. What's the most interesting thing you've learned lately?
That's a really good question. Probably we're doing a lot of work around saying the hard thing. Again, it's come from the book. And the point is that it's connected to feedback, and actually that a lot of people struggle to say the hard thing, and so an awful lot gets unsaid at work. Margaret Heavenan's talked about this with the amount of things that people do not raise that they want to at work is getting in the way of growth. And so we believe that giving people a tool and a framework to say the hard thing is a way to make this easier. But to your point on what I've learned, so we've been experimenting this in our company, we're experimenting this with other companies, and what I have come at the sort of surprising thing that I've learned is that the two skills, there is definitely the ability to say the hard thing. That is a skill. There's a skill and a framework, and that's a skill. But hearing the hard thing is equally important. And until I started doing this stuff, like putting it into practice, I didn't realise that is also a really, really important part of the learning process. Because if I don't have the skill of hearing the hard thing, then what happens is you say it to me, and you've nailed your framework, you're really good, you said the hard thing exactly right, but the learning doesn't land because I don't know how to hear the hard thing. So I respond in a very defensive way, like, oh well, Jimmy, or I get emotional or whatever. But hearing the hard thing, like holding or ignore it, do nothing with it. Being able to kind of hear the hard thing and hold it so that you can actually learn from it. One of my favourite things in hearing the hard thing is we have this sort of approach. It's called the Multiplier effect, and this is new. This is new to me. We've kind of worked on it, we've experimented with it, and it's really working for me. So let's say you say the hard thing to me, something about today's conversation or some work that you've seen us do, and you're like, Helen needs to hear this, and instead of me defending my work or being, really upset by it, I would kind of acknowledge, like, I appreciate you sharing that with me, but I don't have to answer you then and there. Okay, I need to acknowledge it. Appreciate you sharing that with me. But the multiplier effect is where I go and take your feedback and I then go and talk about it with a couple of other people. Now, very quickly, could be same day, within the sort of 48 hours, I might talk to my business partner. I might say, oh, Jimmy's given me this feedback on ... that's happened. I'd really appreciate your perspective. Like, what would you do in this situation? And then I take that bit of insight and I go and talk to someone else, maybe my mentor. And I said, I had this thing that's happened. I've had this feedback. I've had this advice. I'm really interested if you've been in this situation, what would you recommend to do? And what happens is each one of those conversations does two things. It puts me back in control because you saying the hard thing to me I might not have been expecting it. But these conversations I'm in control of. Control makes people feel more comfortable. It reduces the fear so that we can actually learn from it. And the second is I multiply the learning, because I've got your insights, but instead of just responding to it and that being the end, I've then extended it by sharing it with a couple other people. And the thing that is really important is that you then close the loop. So I then come back to you and I say, Jimmy, just wanted to like come back on the conversation that we had on Monday. I've taken it away. These are my reflections. These are some insights I've had, and this is what I'm going to do. And, you know, I would probably say, just wanted to say thank you, because I wouldn't have got to that learning without you starting that conversation. That is a much, much more powerful way to hear the hard thing and learn from it, rather than what most people do is you give it, I respond in the moment, and it's the end of the conversation. It's the end of the conversation, and I don't feel in control because you took me by surprise. And I've really been learning about the impact of it personally. I've been practicing that. We've been working with companies. This idea of saying and hearing the hard thing is really landing in companies because people just aren't doing it enough. And I'm quite excited about what more we can do with it.
Can you give a personal example of when that's happened in terms of the hard feedback and how you've done that multiplier thing?
Yeah.
What do you think? What are you not good at as well? I suppose.
Oh
is part
gosh,
of
loads. Well, I guess a more recent one. There was a situation Sarah and I had recently. We were. She won't mind me saying this. We were away actually at the National Lobster Hatchery in Padstow, where we are now patrons because we've gone pretty deep in the world of lobsters. No pun entirely intended. We were there and we were having dinner. And I decided this would be a great time to give Sarah some feedback. I mean, spoiler, it wasn't. So we'll get to this in a minute. But and the feedback that I was giving Sarah was that I thought she was trying to take control of too many things in the business, and she was taking the lead away from other people in doing that. Like in a quest for control, she was limiting other people's autonomy effectively. I mean, it was quite direct feedback, to which Sarah, quite rightly, was quite defensive about, because I hadn't delivered the feedback in a way that we have designed it to be done, which is like start with an open question, acknowledge where someone is, say the statement quite quickly, and then very quickly involve. Like that's what I should have done. I just said it and stopped, like, because I felt really awkward about it, which is what a lot of people do when they have a difficult message to deliver. And Sarah and I, we've been friends for a really long time. So we kind of had a moment of discomfort and friction, and then quickly flipped to curiosity because we're kind of wired to do this together now. But I took that moment because, I got sort of two things came from it. Like one, I'd upset someone I really care about because of my inability to deliver feedback. And two, I hadn't kind of landed the message that I wanted for our business. I was like, this is wrong. And kind of Sarah sort of played that back to me. And then I talked about that with other people. I talked about it with some people in the team in terms of, how are you finding how I give feedback? Am I too direct? Am I like, what's the best for you? It's various different people that I talked to who would have experienced feedback with me.
Yeah.
And I took their insights. I talked to other people as well who are more direct than me and said, would you have done it like this? How would you have done it differently? Not doing it over dinner was a common thread. Like, give someone the heads up, Helen.
Nice convivial atmosphere.
Like, how's your dinner, by the way? Yeah. Like, but it allowed me to take a moment that I felt like I had failed in, and rather than the feeling of failure sitting with me, of like, oh gosh, how badly did I do that? And my best friend didn't think it was great. I was then able to say, well, actually, you know what? Because I've taken that and I've talked about it with other people, I've learnt more from their approach. I've learnt more about my approach, and then I closed the loop with Sarah, which actually resulted in us improving the model, improving the framework. And it's a bit meta in my world because we give feedback, we write about feedback. It's a little bit meta, but it is the reality. I do have to say the hard thing. I am doing this in my own work as well as trying to help other people with theirs.
Yeah. No, I can see that, and that's feedback.
Yeah.
Loops,
yeah.
Lots of them,
constant loops.
I am very unfairly going to ask you at some point to use 3 words to describe me, actually. But I'm not going to do it. I'll let you. I'll let it work on
Okay.
background RAM for a bit. Maybe we can finish with it.
Okay.
Keep listeners engaged. Talk us through the business model of Amazing If and Squiggly Careers, because I think it's very interesting. Because when I was starting out with Jimmy's Jobs of the Future, as I've talked about, I was looking for kind of like career podcasts and whatever. Came across this amazing one called Squiggly Careers and was like, that's basically my entire ethos and so on. And genuinely for a while thought, oh, well, maybe there isn't something there. Now, obviously, we actually have quite different sort of approaches, formats, and so on. So there's definitely an interesting lesson there as well. But you have, over the kind of 5 years that we've known each other, you have really sort of built like, quite a sustainable business now that's not just podcasting. I don't think it's ever just been podcasting, to be fair. But there's more there. So just, I guess, talk us through the kind of like squiggly universe.
Yeah, the squiggly universe. I think probably the easiest way to talk about it is to share our flywheel. So we use Jim Collins, the kind of concept of a flywheel, to think about how we scale Squiggly, how we keep growing Squiggly. So I guess at the heart of it is an ambition to make Squiggly Careers better for everybody. So that's kind of like and you start to kind of go, what does that mean, and how do we do that? But that's at the heart of it. But on the flywheel, there are 4 elements of our flywheel. So the first is create useful career content. Like that's the very first bit, and I resource my team against these 4 elements, by the way. So I have people whose job it is to help get out what's in mine and Sarah's head to create useful career content. So whether that's the books, whether that's the podcast, whether that's writing for Harvard Business Review, like we try to create as much of that as possible. So that's kind of the first part. That then leads into to create sponsors and supporters of Squiggly Careers, and they are distinct things. And we manage this really carefully. So supporters they're our Squiggly Career community. They're the people that sprint with us. They're the people that post pictures of themselves of lobsters. There is a community. They identify with Squiggly Careers. They want Squiggly to do well. They put the squiggly emoji in their LinkedIn bio. They see themselves as squiggly, and we want loads of those people because it helps us get feedback. It helps us to grow. It makes Squiggly bigger. It makes it a movement, not just a company. So that's our supporters. And then we have our sponsors. And our sponsors are people that take us into organisations, or they're people that say, do you know what? Our company needs to be more squiggly. I've seen what you do. I believe in what you do. I want you to come and do it here. And we do very, very little, if any, direct outreach to companies. All of it comes in because of the sponsors, and we make it easy for them to sponsor. So we've created the Squiggly Careers Company Toolkit because people were showing us the decks they've created with very funny squiggles and things that they've written, and we're like, oh, that's probably not how we describe it, but great. And so we try to make it easy now. We've got a toolkit so they can take it into their company and put it in whatever decks that they want. But that leads to sponsors and supporters is something that we think very strategically about. The next part of the flywheel is that buy products and services. So we look at, well, what are we selling? What are we selling to people? What are our workshops? What are our sessions? What is our pricing? And there's definitely work for us to do there. I think there's lots more stuff that we could put into that area of our world. And then the final bit is that leads to data, insight, and income. And then that feeds our ability to create more useful career content. So obviously we are a company that is revenue generating. We do make profit. That is an important part of us. We're called purpose and profit as a business. And we have targets around that. But also all of that insight and data that we get, so the feedback from our sessions, the insights from our sprint, we're pretty obsessed with feedback, as you've probably got another feedback loop in our business. But all of that goes back into creating useful content. And that might be, so that's going to mean we're going to do that podcast, or that's going to mean our next sprint is going to be on that, or that's going to mean our next book is on learning, because everything that we're talking to about companies keeps giving this problem. And so we need to solve it with more useful content. And I have people in my business aligned to every element of that flywheel. And the harder I work on the content, so the more content I put out, the more advocacy we get. It just spins. So we just, that's how we manage the business.
I think that, and sort of taking the end point of the sprints and so on, and then what to kind of create content around is like your own sort of like Google Trends data, basically.
100%. And it all sounds, I don't want to make it sound very boring and dull. It's not like we're all sat there going like, we're at the flywheel. Like, it's fun. I love it. I love the community. I love the insights. It's there is also a bit of randomness in it where we'll just randomly, I was talking to someone this week about someone in our, here you go, someone, we have lots of WhatsApp groups with these different communities, and Katie, who's in our community, sent me a picture because she's hacked her diary. She's turned her diary into a squiggly diary, and she's taken lots of our tools and prompts, printed them out and put them in her diary so she can fill them out each week. And I was talking to our team and I was like, we need to create a Squiggly Career development diary. So all these tools and models, people have got it, make it really easy. Because we have this saying, like, if it goes in the diary, it's more likely to get done. So if we create a Squiggly Career development diary, it's already in, it's embedded in the diary. And, that's not on the flywheel. At no point have I strategically gone, we should do this. But we might have a bit of fun. We might create one for 1 year, do a short print run, put some digital ones out, and we'll just see, because we're small and we can do that. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, we learn, and if it does work, we do it again. So it is, yes, we think about the flywheel and we think about it strategically, but also like experimenting and having fun.
Just because it's fun.
Yeah, because it's fun and because it feels right. Give it a go.
It's actually one of the big things that we're discussing tomorrow a bit is how to have more fun. Like, we had a very serious 2025. Like, it was great in lots of ways, but yeah, some of the more sort of irreverent, fun stuff and so on is important, right? Because it's partly why people come to work.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's a big sort of driver of it, I think, and we don't often talk about it enough. Go on.
I was going to say, in the book, there's a chapter on play. So play is part of learning. Some really interesting things about the NHS and people's performance increasing when they introduce moments of play in the workday. So I was just thinking of a quick one that you could steal. Like I quite like the Spotify playlists are fun, as literally a fun way of playing. So everyone in the team has to pick a track that is either meaningful to them or they think represents them, and they play the track. You don't have to play all of it, but you play like the first 30 seconds of the track. So you need like an owner of the playlist, someone's going to play it, and then they explain like what the track says about them, why it's meaningful to them. But it's fun and it's a good way of learning about each other. And so you could have a go at that as a fun. You could add that in tomorrow.
Literally
very
pitch
easy
it for tomorrow. I'd say what we've done a few times, which is good. And actually, one of the things you'll quite like this probably as an idea is that we always bring in a couple of like external people as well that are sort of tangentially. And we've got somebody coming in tomorrow who's basically on some extended paternity leave and is just doing some kind of like job experimentation and so on, which I'm really looking forward to sort of coming in and whatever, because I think you're the same as well, right? It's like a cool company, right? And he just wants to kind of come in and just see what we do and what we're about. And I was like, well, come to one of these sort of strategy days. It's always useful to get a bit of outside perspective as well, and it stops us sort of talking to kind of like internally, as it were. But one of the things that we've used, and we've done a couple of times now, is bring in an item that means a lot to you, like what you would save in a fire, and that's always really good. But yeah, I think we'll. And
everyone loves music. Gives a bit of energy. Back to the fun. It's like everyone's like, oh my gosh, Tina Turner, Jimmy, that's a strange choice. Like, it's just fun.
Yeah, definitely. How do you know? Okay, so that's good. And do you have sort of ambitions? Like, you've done so well in kind of 10 years. Like, what are your kind of ambitions for the next 10? Like, where would you really like to take all of it?
We want Squiggly to be synonymous with careers globally. So I want it just to be common language. I quite like it to go into a dictionary, Squiggly Careers, but I want it to be common language. I just want it to be normalised. And I really want it to be credible. So I don't want it to just be a word. I want it to be this practical, like people know what they need to do to create a squiggly career culture. People know what they need to do to own their squiggly career. And Sarah and I start our PhD this year. So part of us being, look at your face.
Just PhD, both of you.
Yeah, both of us. Yeah, we're going back to where we met. It's all very romantic, really. So we're going back to where we met at university, and we're doing it there because they've got an executive PhD that we can do alongside growing our business. But we're doing it on Squiggly. We're doing it on Squiggly. We're doing it on how do we solve this problem with progression that we see in companies? What are the initiatives that make the biggest difference to how we manage progression in organisations, whether it's the leadership, the language, the talent matching to projects. That's what we're going to do it on. So we're going to work with the companies that we already work with, but we're going to do research programs, and we will prove that squiggly progression is better for people and companies than just presenting promotions, which is what we've relied on for a long time.
Definitely. I also think like job titles and promotions are sort of a bit of a dying thing anyway, actually.
Yeah.
Like that, I mean, that's a whole nother topic. There's another bit in the book which is all about job crafting.
Yeah.
And that really struck a chord with me because for 10 years I've sort of crafted my job since basically being at the Institute of Directors before number 10. Had very kind of like supportive bosses there who let me take on lots of extra things, and it was just great. And I just wondered if you could just talk a bit about job crafting and how to go about it.
Yeah. It's again, we could do a whole episode on this, but I'll sum it up. So the idea of job crafting is evolving the role that you do so that you can both create the most value for who you're doing it for and be at your best. Because very often when we apply for a job, we're getting some like outline of like the perfect job, and what you should do every day. And the reality of that actually ends up being quite far away. So our jobs kind of get crafted anyway by the company, but job crafting is something we want the individual to be in control of. But it's not how do I get to do more of what I want, because that's quite hard for people to say yes to. It's this, how do I create more value while at the same time being at my best? It's this kind of two things we've got to get right. So that's what job crafting is. Loads of ways you can do it, but I think one of the easiest ways to do it, again, I think it's quite a fun way. I'm clearly biased about all things careers. But go and look at some job descriptions of jobs that you are intrigued by. Now go on LinkedIn, go find 5 jobs. We'll call it job scanning. Go find 5 jobs that you're like, if I wasn't doing this, then I might do that. And this isn't because you're going to apply for those jobs. This is because you are going to go through the job descriptions of those jobs, and you are going to highlight specifically what it is in those jobs that you find appealing. Maybe it's partnering with people across the business. Maybe it's leading initiatives. Maybe it's having, I don't know, budget responsibility. Whatever it is, you're going to highlight it. You're going to do it for 5 jobs, and then you're going to spot the similarities. Now, actually, in 4 of those jobs, I highlighted leading a team. In 4 of those jobs, I highlighted collaboration, like whatever it is. And those are the things that you want to think, well, how do I get to do more of that in the job that I'm in right now? Because clearly that's things that I want to spend time doing. So how can I design that into the job that I'm doing in a way that is valuable for who I'm doing it for? And then the last point I would say on that how valuable for the people I'm doing it for, the best thing to do is think about how what you want to do can solve a problem or an opportunity that person cares about. That's how you kind of pull it. Otherwise it's push. It's like, well, Jimmy, I want to do some more collaboration. And you're like, great, Helen, but actually we've got this problem with profit. And so that's not that helpful. Whereas if I said, I've really noticed that team over there, their performance is really good. I bet if we collaborate with them, I can take some insights, bring it into our team so we can work on that profit problem. And then you're like, yeah, makes sense, Helen. Like, give it a go. So those kind of areas I think are really important. The job scanning activity is quite good because sometimes people don't know where to start, and it's just quite a practical place to start.
Definitely. And working out what your boss doesn't want to do as well, what your boss's problem is
no, I like your framing, what your boss doesn't want to do. Yeah, that's a really good thing.
Yeah, but it's like, take that off. Like, it's going to help you develop and be seen for everybody. How has your hiring changed over the years?
So I don't think anybody we've hired has done the job before that they're doing for us.
Yeah.
And so we hire people in, and when they come into our business, Amazing If, they come in as a contractor, which is interesting because not everyone wants to start as a contractor. You know, that's more, I'm not sure I would have done when I was in corporate life. It feels like a bit more of a risk. So it potentially limits the pool of people. But part of the reason that we do that is because it helps us to understand whether the person's the right fit. And I think in a small business, that just really matters. Like I think it matters in any business, but it just feels really important that we find the right fit, someone who exemplifies the behaviours. We have these behaviours of kind of responsiveness, care, initiative, and simplicity. And I kind of want to know, like, do you like these behaviours? Is this how you work at work? So it helps us to find the right fit and work out whether it's the best use of that person's strengths. But also it helps us to work out the role. So very often when we're hiring people, I've had this conversation today with someone who's come into our team where I was basically like, are you okay with the ambiguity of the next 9 months? Because I'm not sure what the job is going to be. Like the aim is go from contractor to a permanent employee on the payroll, full-time or part-time, whatever that person wants. But at the moment, I cannot tell you what that job is going to be in 9 months' time, because what we do with people is we have a number of projects. We work out what that individual's really good at. We think about what the business needs. And then we have this period that is very malleable. So, for example, the individual I was talking about today is both working on research for our PhD, a really big purpose project that we've partnered with an organisation on to create squiggly starters. Yeah. She's also working in our client team on improving our proposal process. Like it's broad, but the idea is that together we co-create a role that is both valuable for the business and the best use of that person's strengths. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes we go, either the fit isn't right or the role's like there isn't a role right now, and that has to be the end of it. And we then help that person with wherever they want to go next with our network and knowledge. We'll help that person. Or what has happened several times is we end up with a brilliant role. Like our head of delivery came in working as maternity cover for our team manager, and then we saw her talents, we saw our gaps, evolve the role, and now she's our full-time head of delivery for Amazing If. But that role didn't exist because we kind of didn't know what we didn't know what it was, but we co-create roles.
Well, it's a bit like job crafting.
Yes, very actively.
Job crafting. So yeah, that is. Say it again. As I knew this would be, and I can see Sonny's getting annoyed because I said we wouldn't record for this long, and we are doing. So I'm gonna throw that final one to you.
Okay.
Well, actually, the final one about the 3 words.
Yeah.
How do you create a custom GPT, and what have you used it for?
Oh, Jimmy, I use them all the time. I created one this week. I love it. I love it.
So what's the one you've created this week?
The one I've created this week is about how to introduce yourself. It's based on a TED Talk that I saw where the person had 5 formulas for how you create a powerful introduction in fewer than 20 words. And there's like the breakthrough introduction, there's the strengths introduction. So I created a GPT for our Squiggly Careers community where it will ask you 5 questions, and then it will use your answers to create your five like powerful ways to introduce yourself. And obviously, anyone can do it. It's an open one. How do I do it? I do it on ChatGPT because that's my preferred platform of the present time. I click the create button. Do you know what I actually did this time? Is I used ChatGPT. I said, I want to create one. Write all the documents I need, because you need to load them in for it to learn. I said, write all the documents I need. This is the TED Talk. This is my podcast script that I've done on the TED Talk. This is what I want. Write it so I can create it. Yeah. And then I literally clicked create, uploaded the documents, had a bit of a practice, sent it to some other people, got some feedback, improved it, and that's it. I could create a better how-to, but that's basically it. Took me about 10 minutes.
You know that clip will do well on LinkedIn, right? And finally, 3 words to describe.
And remember, you have to decide whether these are the 3 words you want, which you can decide later. But here's my 3 words. 3 words describe Jimmy at Jimmy's best. Curious. You're super curious, you've always got a question, and you've always got that look. You've got a curious look as well. Like even when you're not
That's
asking the
really
question, I can see the question forming. Connected. You're so connected. Like before we started, we were just talking about people, and you're like, oh yeah, you're so good at building and connecting with people, which I think is brilliant. That's obviously now part of what enables a podcast. And I would also say challenging.
Ooh.
Quite a challenger. Like you don't take something at face value. If you've got a different opinion, you're not afraid to have. I think you do it I see it in a very agreeable way, but I do hear the challenge. I hear that you're like comfortable with challenge.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think there's the three things. I mean, interesting you say curious at the beginning, because I've always thought the mantra of stay humble, stay hungry is very kind of important, but I always add a third one to that, which is stay curious as well. So yeah, I think I would take those, and they're all alliterated as well. Shows you're such a wordsmith as well. Oh, brilliant! Oh well, look, I'm so amazed at everything you do. It's brilliant. I'm so glad we've got to do a few podcasts and we did a live show together as well. I think what you're doing is brilliant, and yeah, it's so great to get you on and support. And people really should get the book, Learn Like a Lobster, because it takes.
Thank you so much, Jimmy.